Grab your cocktail and get ready for this episode of the Old Fashion Masonic Podcast.
Welcome to the Old Fashion Masonic Podcast, where we talk all things Freemasons while drinking an old fashioned. I'm Brian.
I'm Bob.
I'm Dave.
So you've seen these gents on the episodes before. So what we decided to do, based on Worshipful Mike Ward, which you've seen on several other episodes, off camera he said, hey, we need to do a new series and challenge the thought processes of Masons. Well, I said, well, I hate to be controversial, but tell me more, right? So, Debatable is essentially this. We'll have a moderator, we'll have a pro and a con. Now, here's the deal. We'll start right off the bat. We're going to flip a coin for who's going to be the pro or the con. They don't know what the topic's going to be yet. So, based on that, whatever their stances, and they're going to fight for this stance one way or the other. It's not necessarily their belief, because how can it be? They don't know what it is as they're walking into it. So we'll start simply with this. Bob, the square and compass will be heads, and the Great Seal of Kansas, we're using Most Worshipful Darren Kellerman's challenge coin.
Appropriate.
So heads will be the square and compass, and then you get to call what
Heads.
Heads?
It's heads.
It is heads.
It's
so
heads.
Would you like to be the pro or the con on the topic you don't know yet?
Not knowing the topic, I will be con.
I'll go with pro.
Well, you know what? Thank you for that. And as the moderator for the first one, so we'll just go here. We'll just open it up, this sealed envelope. You're the con. The sealed envelope is Lodge dues should all be the same. So this means this. For example, in our jurisdiction, in our city, we have 7 to 9 lodges in the metro area. So we're going to give them some time to think about it. We'll come back, but the pro, Dave's going to argue that all lodge dues should be the same, and Bob is going to argue why they shouldn't be. Stay tuned.
5 minutes later.
Okay, we're back. So we gave the gentlemen some time to build up their cases for this. So how it'll start, the pro for all lodge dues should be the same will be Dave. So Dave will have his opening comments as the proponent. The opponent will have some comments. Then we'll give them a chance to argue the points. And then at the end, you guys think they have the tough job. I'm going to be judged because I have to pick with whom I may side with on the argument. So with that said, Dave, get ready to get your ass kicked. Go.
Yeah, right. I would like, real quick, to shout out to Mike Ward. Thank you for this subject. This is, I think this is a great game.
The topic is going to be awesome.
Right?
Yeah.
And also, thank you for dropping out. Because now Brian and I get to debate against the former Grandmaster of Kansas, so appreciate that. All right, I'll go ahead and get started. So when we're choosing a lodge, there's a lot of different factors that can go into that, right? First, location. You don't want something that's too far from your house. You won't go. If there's men there that you know, people that you trust, that's a factor as well. There's a lot of things that can go into your choice of lodge, including reputation of that lodge. But one of the things more increasingly has become price. You know, I don't know if I'm getting stronger in my old age, but $100 worth of groceries just doesn't feel as heavy as it used to. And times are changing. Inflation is high. The economy is not the worst, but it's not the best either. So price definitely comes a factor in many decisions that we make. And what I would hate to see is for price to be a factor in where a young man chooses to go to lodge. And I would like to eliminate that factor as much as possible. We could have all Wichita area Masonic lodges just have the same dues. And if we need to do some dues sharing or whatever it is to make that work, to make Masonry in Wichita work and be fair, then that's a detail that we can work out later. But yeah, I think that all of these lodges should have the same price so that we can eliminate that. We can eliminate the dollar as the decision point for a man.
Okay. So, give your opening opposing comments.
Yeah, and I think it centers on 3 points when I thought it out, right? So, first of all, it's the membership makeup of a lodge, right? You may have a lodge who may cater more toward a certain demographic, retired, or a certain part of town which may or may not be as possibly affluent. I'll use that word probably incorrectly. So I think you have different membership makeup, which definitely drives a different capability or what they feel they can afford to pay. So I actually think that can and should vary by lodge, right? The second point really is it depends on what a lodge is doing, right? If they are heavily involved in more projects, giving more to the community, and that's something that I want to do, that's the experience I want to join, then I absolutely expect to pay more for that. So I would expect that lodge to have more, they're putting more out, there needs to be more coming in. That could be done through fundraisers and other things, but dues should absolutely be a part of that. And probably both of those touch on the last point I would make is, now that I'm in, I probably didn't look at this when I first joined, in fairness, now that I've been for 30 years, I'm looking for a specific experience when I go to that lodge. And again, that's part of the projects and maybe part of the demographics I talked about on the first 2 points. But one example is I belong to a fairly urban lodge here in Wichita, Kansas. My second lodge in Howard, Kansas, I joined it because it was everything not Albert Pike Lodge. Their building is purchased. They actually have rental income that's come for that. There are a lot of factors that make them less in dollars. I won't say the disparity, right? At my second lodge and my first lodge, I enjoy them both, and I understand I need to pay to play for those experiences, right? So those are my 3 points why I'm against an even due structure for lodges.
All right, okay. So you both given a pro, your con, your opening statement. Now you have a chance to rebuttal and insert some points for your counter.
Yeah, fair enough. So I agree that different lodges have disparate needs, different agendas, and definitely the funds necessary for those desires can vary from lodge to lodge. So my counter then would be, and you kind of touched on it a little bit, but I'll go more heavily into it. If a lodge needs more funds than what than what their dues are bringing in, there are fundraising opportunities. You've got lots of members with lots of ideas and friends and family and all kinds of things that you could put together to raise funds for your lodge to do whatever endeavors that you want. So again, the dollar shouldn't be the reason that you choose the lodge, but if you do want a lodge that does those extra things, then you could use that to find it, right? You could use the criteria of the lodge that does the things that you want to be part of, go to that one, and then, you know what, join their fundraising opportunities to get those extra funds.
Great point. I guess the only rebuttal point, I need to make sure that I'm rebutting it, not kind of going with you. Removing price as a factor for decision, although I think that's very important, that cannot be for someone that's engaged in the Blue Lodge. Let me preface it with that. If that is where you want to be sitting for part of your experience, it's hard to argue that you hope price isn't the only factor in that, right? But there are other factors I think can weigh into that. So I think even if you have disparate degrees or disparate dues for the different lodges, I think removing price as a factor can be done in other ways as well. I just think that I think leveling the playing field with dues isn't going to work because you're not leveling the playing field on experience and everything else.
So I had a strong opinion of this going in. So I have to make sure that my opinion doesn't sway what was brought to the table. I would have probably added some things here and some things here. So my initial thought going in was this, or is this. I don't want somebody to pick a lot. My opinion only. This is my real opinion. You don't know what theirs opinion because they were told what to do, right? My opinion is I like that the lodge prices are the same because it's not the dues raised here, what good or some reason they're not hopping over here, and all of a sudden you're moving folks to a lodge with lower dues that may not even be able to sustain it. So if it closes, what is that look? And then will it be hard for them to come back? So, and I also think by putting the lodge dues at the same price, it might force some consolidation, which I think is much needed in probably every jurisdiction, but I would argue this in Wichita, Kansas, or at least this area. 9 lodges is probably too many, because how many times have we been to lodge and it's 7 or 10 people, and the experience is quite different than when it's 50. So, if there was a magic wand in Masonry, which we asked, I'd love to see an east side, a west side, maybe a central lodge, but that's not the question. The question is, should all lodge dues be the same? So based on the points that were presented today, and the most compelling is the experience is different, and I think where I would probably lend it to Bob's argument is this. You brought up the Howard Lodge, and that's the one that swayed me, because I know that lodge and I know why they can have their dues that way, and I would argue that their experience is the same and sometimes better than Pike, which is all of our home lodge, and it's not money related. So where I was so 100%. Focused on doing this and as a business person keeping everything a certain way, based on the arguments that were presented, I would probably be an opponent for now. However, you, the listeners, you're going to give us your perspective and also future topics that we might want to challenge, because we're not scared. Now, don't make it within Masonry, but don't be a dick. I know some of you guys out here. So, but just think that through. So this was our first episode we're going to release on the Debatable series. And we want you to stay with it, and we want to always challenge Masonry, not to challenge Masonry, but to challenge Masonry to see how viable we can be. If you say we won't be viable, then we won't. But if we start having the tough conversations, we can now create pockets to where we can improve the experience for our sons, our grandchildren, our future grandchildren. So it's up to us. If you care about the fraternity, you have to have the tough conversations. And maybe you should do the Debatable in your lodge and force a camp. They don't necessarily believe, but let's have the discussion in lodge about a topic, because this is where the real if you got some silly podcasters out of Kansas bringing up a conversation, that's great. The real conversation needs to be had in your lodge.
Here.
So thanks for watching the Old Fashion Masonic Podcast.
Yeah. Cheers.
Cheers.
Well done. Yeah, good job.